So in this episode, we're going to get into the all grain brewing. This is what I do. I know the last episode we did talk about extract brewing, and I touched on the equipment that is needed for the basic home brewing equipment. So a little bit more detailed this time. We'll slow down the brewing process so we can sort of touch base and talk about a few things about it. First thing I'm going to do is talk about our water. So water chemistry is very important to the brewing process. The profile of water really is the backbone of your beer. These specific beers, classical beers that came out of these other parts of the world, their water profiles are adjusted, and then they make that beer the classic tasting beer that you are accustomed to, or at least how it was originally made to be. So what you're going to get into is a little water chemistry is something I've just recently done, probably in the last few years. I'm trying to really narrow down my water profile. If you're a new home brewer or beginning home brewer, don't concentrate so much on the water profile. Try and get your recipes going. Try and produce, you're going to produce a good beer. Most water that comes out of your taps, pretty much anywhere in the US at least, is going to be good enough. You're going to be all right with it. You're going to have, your beers will come out, good. The only thing I do recommend is that you try to get the chlorine out. I use a carbon filter on my brew tap that I have down in the basement here. But you can also get Camden tablets, which will help remove the chlorine. And you can also just, if you want to, get your pot kettle ready for your mash and do it the night before. And just let that water sit out and the chlorine will evaporate out of it. So once you get your water to a specific point, once you start to advance this process, you're going to want to have your water tested. Now, I know a lot of municipalities will put on websites what their water contains, but that's coming from their tap, not the tap from your house, which has just traveled, 10, 20, 50 miles to get to your house through numerous pipes. So I send my water profiles all out to Wort laboratories, and I do this once or twice a year. I even sent out, now that I'm using distilled water and I have a water distiller that I'm making my own distilled water with, I've sent that water out also because I want to see minerals that were originally in the water are coming out between the two, from the tap and then from the distiller. So I send my water into Wort laboratories. This is what you'll get back. You're going to get back a sheet like this. They'll email it to you. I'll put their website down below. A lot of people they have a specific brew water test kit. So it's specifically for home brewers or breweries, because breweries can use this also. But they'll send you out a little plastic bottle in a box. You fill that up with whatever water that you're using for your brewing process. Put it right back in the same box they gave you. They give you a return label, stick it on there, put it in the FedEx, and probably within 2 days after they receive your water sample, they're going to email you the results. And it comes in a PDF, so you can, print it out if you want. And as I said, I've done this with my tap water, and I just wanted to see what my distilled water is. And then what we do is we're going to dow, depending on the type of beer you want, you're going to, and there's a lot of ways to figure this out. There's online calculators that'll show you the range of what, we'll just say a pale ale. It'll show you the range of what each of those salts should be within that beer. You can go on to other people's recipes, like let's say somebody made a pale ale and you just want to know what they did their parts per million of those salts. You just want to replicate it. So what I use, and this is what everybody else uses, I'm assuming. But all right, so first we'll go with gypsum. If you can see, hopefully you can see that as it drops out on the floor. So that's gypsum. You can get all of these things right at your homebrew store or homebrew online, wherever you guys end up getting your stuff. Next is Epsom salts. Just same thing you put in your bathtub. This is what, I'm sure people know what Epsom salts look like, but they're like a crystal, almost looks like a really coarse salt almost. And then we got our calcium chloride, which is going to be one of the other ones you put in. They're just like little marbles, little beads. That's how it comes. And then last one is going to be salt. It's table salt, but it's no iodide. You want to get non-iodide salt. So, and you can find it. This one's just Wegmans. Morton salt's also, you'll see this right where you buy all your regular salt. I think sea salt is also another way you can go. I've never used it, and so I don't know on that one, really. So anyways, once you calculate out what you're going to do, I use Beersmith, but there are other programs that you can do. And you're going to put in what parts per million of the designated salts that they reference. And what's going to happen is that you plug in your own water profile. In my case, distilled water, but if it's spring water, some of the spring water companies, if you buy spring water, you can go online and they'll also show what their water profile is. And there's some that actually you got to make sure you get it from the right source. So I have used spring water here. This is Crystal Geyser, but on the bottle it typically says where the water came from. This one comes from Jamestown, New York, but they do have other sources where they get their water from around the country. So you got to make sure, in this example, make sure you go and you get the right water source where that water actually came from, because I'm sure the profiles are probably a little different depending on what part of the country it came from. And then you can use tap water. And again, you send out your water profile or your water sample to Ward, and you'll get back your water profile, and you can do it that way. The only thing is, typically tap water is going to have high amounts of parts per million of those individual chemicals or minerals, and it's hard to reduce those. So they're already at this level, and you want it down here, and it's going to be very hard to bring that water down, those specific minerals down and salts down. So using a blank slate like distilled RO water, spring water does have some parts per million of those individual salts and minerals, but it's lower. Typically it's lower. I'm not going to talk for all of them. So once you get your water profile in, you determine what amounts of these individual salts you're going to add, and then put it into your kettle or your mash tun, depending on the system that you're using. If you're using a mash tun, then put it into when the water is at room temperature. Don't put it in there prior to or after it's been heated. Some of these salts actually dissolve better in cool water, and some will dissolve better in warm water. So if you end up putting them all in the cool water, and then it heats up, all your salts are going to dissolve and go into suspension that way. So just be a little thoughtful of that. So once you get your salts ready, and your water's all set, if you're using a mash tun, then you're going to heat it up, your hot liquor tank, and then you're going to get your temperature for your strike temperature. So then when you're doing your mash, you got your temperature set at that point. In my case, I use a brew in a bag. I use the claw hammer system, so I heat up my kettle, set the temperature of what I want. Usually it's a few degrees higher than my mash temperature is going to be. And then once I add in my grain, that temperature will drop down those couple degrees. I reset my temperature, so we're going to say we're going to mash at 152. I would actually have my water set at 156. It would drop down those 4 degrees once you put in your grain, And then I just set it at 152 and then hope to God that the temperature stays in one spot. We're going to mill our grains. New home brewers, you can get them milled at your homebrew shop or online. They'll usually send it out to you already milled. But obviously, if you're getting into more advanced, you're going to go out and get yourself a mill. You want to buy, I buy usually 50-pound bags of my base malts. And then my other malts that I'll use, specialty malts, I usually buy between 2 and 5 pound bags. And then I got containers that I store all my malts in. And then I usually have them on hand. Even if I'm doing a recipe that I don't have that malt on hand, if I order a different specialty malt, I'll usually get extra, more than I need for that specific recipe. That way I'll have it around for something else that I may want to do down the road. Best thing to buy for your grains, especially when you're buying large quantities of your base grains, is the Vittle boxes that you use for your animals, your dogs and cat food that you buy. They usually hold around 50 pounds, and they're great for storing your bulk grain. And then I use small containers. Actually, Homebrew Challenge, Martin Keene, he actually bought his at Dollar General. He's got a link on one of his shows, and that's actually where I got mine too. So they're relatively cheap. I think I got 20 of them for, I don't know, it was like $10 or something, $11. So I use those. And then for anything around 10 pounds, I'll use a 5-gallon pail, and you can actually buy lids for those that are twist off on lids. So like what I got here, I got my Munich 20 in here, and these just spin right off. So I can just take them off, and then I got my grain in the bottom there. Not much left of it though. Ooh, that smells good. So that's what I use. And these are just regular food grade 5-gallon pails. You get them at Lowe's, Home Depot. Just make sure they're food grade. And then the lids just snap on, and then you got the screw part that comes off of it. And then these are the ones I use for the smaller amount of specialty grains. These are just I got some crystal malt in here. And like I said, these I got, pretty sure at Dollar General. I'll put a link down below where I actually got these. Either Dollar General or the Dollar Store or Dollar Tree or something like that. Probably like the $8 tree now. So then we get our grains. We get them weighed out for our recipes. We mill them. I'll be shooting some video, putting up. You'll see some video of milling, like you haven't seen it before. So once you get your grain milled, you start your mash. You're gonna put your milled grain in. My example, it's gonna be my basket for my claw hammer, or you're gonna put it into your mash tun. Get your water set to the right temperature, and then you do your mash. And your mash is gonna be typically 60 minutes. Depending on the type of beer you're making. Sometimes you're going to go longer. Some guys now are going 30-minute mashes and 30-minute boils, and they're coming out relatively good with their numbers the way they should be. So that's another way you can do it. I would recommend going to 60-60, especially new home brewers. And then once you start experimenting and you're getting a little bit more comfortable with checking your specific gravity and things like that, then you can start experimenting with going with shorter mashes and shorter boils. Some boils, you do big beers, you're going to want to go for a 90-minute boil. And some people do 90-minute boils all the time. So it all depends on how you think your beers are coming out, how well you think they're working at the times that you're using. But with the only thing about home brewing, everything is an experiment. Not everything is set in stone. You can make adjustments here and there, and it's not going to adversely affect your outcome. Try little things. Try doing things different once in a while. Make sure you record it, though. Make sure you keep track of exactly what you're doing, because that beer comes out at the end of the day when you're pouring it out of your bottle or you're pouring it out of your tap. You're going to want to know why this beer tastes so good. What did I do different this time? And make sure you keep track of what you did different. Or why did this beer not come out so good? What did I screw up? Done that many times. I've had a couple beers that come out, they just don't taste the way they're supposed to. And you start looking back through your notes and you're going, oh, this is what I did different than I did the last time. That's why I'm assuming this is why my beer has come out different. So when we get into our mash, then you're going to do your mash out. So you're either going to sparge if you're using a mash tun, or my example, I just raise the temperature. I don't really do a sparge. I just raise the temperature up to about 168. For 10 minutes, that'll be my mash out. But if you're using a mash tun, then you're going to do a sparge, and then Whirl off. I don't usually do a Whirl off either, because I'm running mine through my pump. That it's usually fine. And then obviously when I'm pulling my grains out, they're no longer there. So I pull my grains out. My beer is, I'm sorry, my wort. My wort is as clear as it's going to get. I don't have to Whirl off. But if you're using a mash tun, whether it's a big cooler like I used to use, or if you got a nice, brewing system that you actually have a separate mash tun kettle. So after your mash is done, then you're going to do your boil. So as I said, probably a 60-minute boil. Typically, that's what everyone's doing. At least that's what I usually do. So you do your 60-minute boil, and then your recipe will indicate when you're supposed to be adding your hops. So you're going to be adding your bittering hops at the beginning, and then you'll start adding your aroma flavor hops towards the mid to end of the boil. And then sometimes you're going to go into adding hops in your Whirl Pool. I typically do the typical bittering hops, aroma flavor hops, probably 3 additions, 60, maybe 30, and then last 15, 10 minutes. And then probably a Whirl Pool addition, depending on what I'm making. Once you're, obviously once the hops are in, then you move on to, in my case, I have the ability to do a Whirl Pool. If you do not have the ability to do a Whirl Pool, you don't have a pump, you're just using a burner in your boil kettle, you can use your stir and, just do a Whirl Pool that way. That'll help move things around and push some of those hop sediments into the center of the kettle. If you're using a hop spider, typically you're not going to have that issue with a lot of hop material at the bottom of your kettle. But still, if you're going to do a whirl, or if you're going to add late hop additions, especially during a Whirl Pool, you're going to want to obviously make a Whirl Pool. You're going to want to cool your wort down. Usually it's around the 180 to 85, 190 area. That's usually what I shoot for when I'm doing my Whirl Pools for hop additions. If I'm just doing a Whirl Pool, no hop additions during the Whirl Pool, I don't really care about what the temperature is. I'm cooling it at that time anyway, so it's not an issue. I'm running it through the plate chiller, so I'm not concerned about the temperature of the wort at that point. And then we're going to cool it. So you new homebrewers, sometimes you're going to be putting the whole kettle in an ice bath. You're going to get maybe a counterflow chiller. I have one. I'll shoot a picture of it somewhere around here. It's one that I made years back, and it's that flexible copper piping that you can sort of bend, not real great, but it does bend. Usually comes in a coil. You feed that through a garden hose. There's some guys on YouTube, that's how I found out, and then you are able to actually make that as a counterflow chiller. It works great. If you got good temperature groundwater, especially obviously in the colder months, then your groundwater is going to be really cold, depending on where you live. But it definitely cools it down. It's I think I would say it's probably better than my plate chiller, but my plate chiller takes up a smaller footprint, so I tend to use my plate chiller. And then you got your plate chillers. Another way of cooling down your wort, as I said, ice baths. If you're in the extract still, you're going to probably be not having a full 5 gallons at the time that you put it in the fermenter, and so you can add cold water to bring your volume back up to the 5 gallons. So that's another way that you're going to be able to cool your wort. Once I've cooled it to a relatively temperature that I'm comfortable with, then I'll start filling the fermenter. So I'm still running through my plate chiller, but I usually recirculate it so it cools the whole kettle down. And then once it gets down to a reasonable temperature, which is usually I usually get it down to around 85 degrees Fahrenheit, then I'll start filling the fermenter. And then again, it's still going through the plate chiller, so that wort that's coming out of the end of the hose is cooler than what I still have in the kettle. As long as my groundwater is colder than I'm shooting for. I typically do not get it down to pitching temperature. I usually will have to then put it in the fridge and set the temperature there. I will typically go a couple degrees below my pitching temperature. So if it's recommends 62 to 68 degrees, I'll do it around 60 degrees. And then, you know, that yeast is going to start warming that thing up, and then just, it'll come up to your temperature, you know, within a day. And then let it ride out for whatever it takes. When you're doing your mash, the first 10 minutes or so of your mash, you're going to want to check your pH. You're going to want to get a pH meter. This is what mine is. This is what I use. I've had it for 3 years, I believe now. I have replaced the electrodes. I don't know what the hell those things are called. I guess they're like, I don't know. But anyways, they're the ones that tell you what the pH is. I had this sitting in a storage unit when I was going to be moving, and it sat in there for like a year. And the storage solution that is usually in this bottom cup right here with a little sponge had dried out. So I ended up just getting new electrodes for this, and you can order them online, and it just comes off, twists off, comes back on, and then it runs by battery. So make sure you check your pH. Check your pH of your water prior, just to see what it is, especially if you don't have the breakdown of your water source. You can just check your own pH also. And then you're going to want to be checking your gravity throughout your brewing process. So you're going to want to check your gravity during your mash. You're going to want to check your gravity at post-mash, pre-boil. And you're going to maybe periodically check your boil gravity during the boil process to see where you are in. If, like with me, I use like I said, I use Beersmith. That will tell me where my gravity is supposed to be at those specific points. So pre-boil, end of boil, post-mash. So what I use is I use this what is this thing called? Refractometer. So I use a refractometer. This one's relatively cheap. They are not precise. They are close, but don't take it for the gospel. They're going to be off a couple points. Lower gravity, so if you're like around the 103s in that range, this will be off maybe 02 or 002, 0.002. But if you start getting into higher gravities, if you get up into the 1080s, 1090s, then this is going to be off a lot. This is going to probably be off anywhere between 10 and 20 points. So just keep that in mind. So what I usually do is I keep an eye on my specific gravity with the refractometer, and just to make sure it's, at least moving in the right direction. But then I'm going to also use a hydrometer. I showed this before in my other video, but I've had this forever. I have never broken one yet. But this is what I use to get my actual gravity reading. So I'll use this for my original gravity and my final gravity. Those two are your important gravity numbers to determine your ABV. And then the other one that I have is I use a tilt. I got two of these. I have a green one. This is the green one. And I have a black one. So, geez, it's on because I've been moving it around. I just saw it flashing. But this is what a tilt looks like. This is just a little case that it comes in. Don't be like Martin Keene. And I think one of the first times he used it and he couldn't figure out why it wasn't working right because he forgot to take the tilt out of this. So this is what you actually put in your fermenter right here. All right. Mine is hooked up to an iPad, and I keep the iPad right next to my cooler, my fermenting refrigerator freezer. So the Bluetooth will connect as long as it's adjacent to it. I usually connect, and I keep it on It's pretty much dedicated. My iPad, I think I bought it, and that's all I use it for, really. But Tilt, if you get one of these, you go on their website. They have a way of, and the software that either download on your phone or on the iPad like I use, you can set it up to, it'll every 10 minutes, every hour, every 3 hours, every day, depending on how you want to set it up, it will send a reading to the your Gmail. The first reading gets sent to your Gmail. You open up that email from Tilt, and it's going to be Gmail's sheets, sort of like Excel, but it's their sheets. And then once you have your sheet, you put in that address that it was generated for that specific sheet, and then you can put that in my example, my Brew Beersmith. Put it in my Beersmith, and then I can update it. So it's right into my Beersmith program, my specific gravity and temperature, and I can keep track of that. Now, the only thing with the Tilt is you'll start getting trub stuck to these. You get your krausen. So they sort of get some gunk stuck to it, and that's going to affect the gravity reading because this is based on how it's floating. So I think you'll start out more like at this angle, and then as the gravity goes down, it starts to tilt like this. So, and obviously if it was straight up, it would be water. But once it gets some stuff on there, the actual final reading, let's say you get at the end of your 14 days of your fermentation is stopped. This is not going to be accurate. It's going to be close. It will definitely give you an idea if fermentation is stopped. I mean, once you start seeing the same number after a few days of your specific gravity, then you know fermentation has stopped. But then again, we still go back to the hydrometer. I always check the gravity before kegging with this, because this one, at least I know, is as accurate as I'm going to get. There are obviously other types of hydrometers out there that are expensive. A little bit more scientific. You actually will put the wort right in, or the beer right into it, squirt it in, and then it gives you a reading. Those are very accurate. These are as close as I'm going to get until I can afford to get one of those other ones. And so that's as far as I'm going to go on this one. We're not going to talk much more about the kegging process. That's going to be another video. So we are just getting up to, actually I probably went too far with the fermentation also, but we'll see. So anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. As I said, I will put some links to some of the things that we talked about in the description. If you have not seen the first video of this series, I'm going to put the card right up here, and you can click on that and go to it, or I'll put the link in the description also, so you can click back to that one if you want to watch that one before this one, or whatever. It's not like it's a murder mystery. You don't need to know what happened before this one. So again, enjoy homebrewing. I hope you guys enjoy my videos. We will continue on. So enjoy these series, guys. The next one will be coming out hopefully in a week or week and a half. I'm a little bit behind. I was busy the last couple weeks, and I just didn't get a chance to get these videos finished up. So we will see you again. Enjoy homebrewing. Make some beer. I do. Later.